May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. What a church, dear friends. We sing country music on a Sunday, and we have a priest who is a surfer. In fact, it's a very generous term saying I'm a surfer. I'm firmly in the beginner category. If you have ever watched someone battle the foam at Blackie's or Doridelli's, spending 90% of their time wiping out, losing their board, and swallowing half of the Pacific, that's me. But it's getting better. Last Saturday, I already stood up on the board. 1 second, but I stood up. When you're learning this, how to surf, one of the hardest things to overcome is the sheer weight of the ocean. When a set comes rolling and you are caught inside, your brain screams at you to muscle through it. But every time you try to overpower the ocean wins. You get humbled immediately. I've been thinking about the feeling in the past days reading Romans and Matthew, because spiritually speaking, most of us spend our entire lives trying to muscle the ocean. In Romans 10, what we just heard from Paul, contrasts two completely different ways of living before God. First, there's righteousness based on the law, the spiritual version of trying to overpower the ocean. It is the exhausting effort to prove you are good enough. Paul says if you want to be justified by your own performance, you have to be perfect. Good luck. It's a rat race that leaves us anxious and terrified that we are one mistake away from going under. Then Paul flips the script. He quotes Deuteronomy and says, "Do not say in your heart, who will ascend into heaven or who will descend into the abyss." Stop acting like God is playing hide and seek. You don't have to pull off a monumental feat to reach him. The word is near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart. This is the core of justification by faith. What a term. You may think that, okay, Reverend Adam, it's just a term you are interested. It's something nerdy theological stuff, justification by faith. But you do not earn your standing with God. You don't hustle your way into His favor. God has already come down to you in Jesus Christ. The heavy lifting is done. Salvation isn't a trophy you win. It's a gift you receive simply by trusting who Jesus is. That sounds simple, but for driven, high-achieving people, and let's be honest, Newport Beach is full of us, that is the hardest thing, the word to accept. We want a checklist. But Paul says, confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. Believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, and you will be saved. No prerequisites, just trust. And that brings us right onto the water in Matthew 14, the trust. It is the middle of the night, the fourth watch. The disciples are miles from shore, exhausted by waves, rowing against the headwind. Suddenly they see a figure walking on the waves. And this figure says, the ghost, well, it's not a ghost, it was Jesus, it says, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." In the original Greek, the words what Jesus used here, "it is I," simply "I am." The exact name God used at the burning bush when he met Moses. I am. Jesus isn't just saying, "Yo, how are you guys? It's me." He's saying the creator of these waves is standing right here. And Peter does something wild. He says, "Lord, if it's you, I hope it's you, tell me, command me to come to you on the water." And Jesus says, "Sure, come." Every law of physics and self-preservation tells Peter to stay in the boat. The boat is tossed around, but at least it floats. Stepping off into a stormy ocean, well, over there it was a sea, but ocean, is absurd. Yet Peter steps over the edge. Why? Because faith is not just a theological idea, it is a lived posture of trust. Peter didn't step out because he was a master swimmer. He stepped out because he trusted the voice calling him. For a brief, miraculous moment, Peter walks on water. His faith wasn't anchored in his own ability to float, but entirely on the person holding him up. But then reality creeps back in. Peter takes his eyes off Jesus and looks at the wind. He panics. The moment his focus shifts from the promise of Christ to the chaos around him, he begins to sink. Any surfer knows that feeling. The moment you stop looking where you want to go and stare directly at the crushing wave, down you go. I just had this experience last Saturday when I end up in the washing machine. Anyway, Peter starts going under. But look at his response. He doesn't pray polished, formal prayers like, "Almighty and ever living God, that thou dost vouchsafe to feed your people." No, no, no. No polished prayer. He just screams the three words, "Lord, save me." And Jesus was there, right there, to reach out. And as the gospel says and gives a witness, immediately. Jesus is right there when we are sinking. He's acting immediately. Jesus didn't wait for Peter to figure it out on his own, how to get out from the stormy waves. He didn't give a lecture. He reached straight down into the water and grabbed him by the wrist. Dear friends at St. James, here is the truth for us today. Faith is not the absence of fear, and it certainly isn't never slipping. If faith required perfection, Peter would have drowned that night. Faith is simply knowing who to cry out to when you start singing. You don't have to manage the impossible on your own steam. The God who commands the wind and the waves has already stepped into your storm. Some of you sitting here today are in a boat that feels relatively safe, but God is saying one word, "Come." Maybe He's calling you to step out in forgiveness, or He's calling you to quit an addiction, step into a new calling, or finally stop trying to earn His love. Stepping out will feel scary. The waves will look massive. If you rely on your own strength, you stay in the boat every time. But if you look at the one who says, I am, you'll realize that the water beneath your feet isn't holding you up, but He is. And even if your faith wobbles, the hand that caught Peter is ready to catch you today. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Not everyone who swims perfectly, everyone who calls. So take courage, step off the boat. Jesus will hold you. Amen.